All right, let's look at number one, past tense. And that is chapter 1. Here's where we've been. That is basically what to expect from life. And we have Solomon's test and then incurable vanity. We've been through that. Then we've had chapter 2, which is the meaning and purpose of wisdom. So we talked about that just a little bit, but how would we summarize the meaning and purpose of wisdom? Am I on, by the way? Okay. How would we summarize the meaning and purpose of wisdom? Well, maybe we need to go back over to chapter 2. All right, first of all, what is wisdom? Or understanding, but okay, what's the beginning of wisdom? Fear of the Lord. So we have to have respect for authority that would be God's authority, and respect for God's operational procedures in the world in order to have wisdom. True wisdom begins with God, and it is understanding how things work in the world. Today in our society, we call it a secular society. What does secular mean? Without God. That means it is trying to understand everything without recourse to what God has to say on it, whether it be in the fields of psychotherapy or whether it be in the field of history or science. We have at the university level, and frequently now at the high school and lower level, we have started off by saying we're keeping God out of the picture, and we have an entire worldview that does not have recourse to God. So that means we will have no wisdom and no real understanding about human nature, about life, about the world, about the country, about the causes that cause us to fall, that cause people to stumble. We're not going to have a good idea about that. We just will not. So the sources of wisdom would be, of course, I should say the meaning of wisdom would be that is God, a respect of God, number one, and then we have in nature and wisdom and history, that is God has put His wisdom stamp, His thumbprints on everything. I think that's interesting to think about. So one of the attorneys, one of the great lawyers of England yesteryear, this would be in the 18th century, was William Blackstone. William Blackstone. And he commented this way. He said, all laws in a country that we have now, all laws are reflective, or should be reflective, of God who has left His fingerprints on everything. Something like that, I'm paraphrasing it. All laws should be reflective of what God has to say. That is, we have to have some baseline from which we operate. Have we been that way? No, we started off that way. That's why, for example, marriage was considered to be between one man and one woman for life. That's why it was that way at the beginning of our country. And we didn't feel like we needed to put a law into place saying, by the way, 2 men cannot marry, 2 women cannot marry, you cannot have polygamous relationships. We didn't put that encoded in law. That's because we had a Christian understanding of a God-centered worldview. But since we have jettisoned that, we've had something completely different. And that's really what we have when we talk about the meaning and purpose of wisdom. So our duty is to get wisdom, which begins with God and His book. So now here we are in number 3, and that is the access to wisdom, wisdom in God's book. That's where we were. But today, I want us to look at the fruits of wisdom. And we could say fruit or fruits of wisdom. So this begins on my page. Now, I don't know what page it is in your book, but that would be page 50 in mine. Where are you in that one, Nita? Mine, it starts with 50 with the fruit of wisdom. Our benefits. That is benefits. Okay, benefits. Benefits would be the same thing as fruit. All right, page 57 in your book. If you have your book, page 57. So this is several passages that show us what are the benefits of wisdom. So we begin with Proverbs chapter 3, as you can see, verses 13 to 18. So let's pick up Proverbs 3 for a moment, just as a baseline for us to have some clear understanding about the benefits of wisdom. Proverbs 3, 13 through 15. Where's Proverbs? Oh, there it is. Dave looks at me like, really? 3:13. 3:13. I believe that's where we are. We're going to take it through verse 18. All right, one of you take off and read that one. All right, let's look at this one particular. The summary, of course, is that this is a blessing to everyone. It's better than having wealth, gold, and silver. But one of the interesting comments that he makes is found in verse 16, which he tells us what? What's in her hand? Long life. You want to live a long life, a healthy life, then live a godly life. Correct? Those who live by the sword die by the sword. Those who live on the drug scene, they die on the drug scene. Those who live in the gang activities, they die in gang activities. If you want to live a long life, those who live in alcohol, they die in alcohol. If you want to have a long and healthy and profitable life, live a godly life. And that's what we have here with Proverbs chapter 3. Isn't that correct? So we have that. That's number one. So that takes us to page, which is the next page, which is wisdom brings long life. So verse 2, let's go back to verse 2 of chapter 3. Length of days and long life and peace shall they add to you. That is, if you find the wisdom and the riches therein. Or verse 8, it will be healing. We're in chapter 3 still of Proverbs. It will be healing to your body and nourishment to your bones. Now, how is that the case? Why would that be the case? Healing to your body. How is that the case, David? What do you think? I think it's probably talking about older years, but I think it would encompass all years. What? Oh, yeah, you bet. That's right. Well, think about this also. How many people have you known that look so many years older than they really are? It doesn't at first in their 20s and 30s really catch up with them, but all of a sudden when they hit their 40s and 50s, they have lived a hard life, and you can see it. You can see it. It's just so sad. I think, wow, look at that. And I think, well, but, you know, people say, well, look at that to me, about me too, perhaps. I don't know. But it does wear on your body. As I've told you the story many times about people I knew in high school that were just so much in drugs, and boy, by the time they're 50, they had no teeth. None. Gone. They had to have, not because they had dental problems from birth, genetic, but because they had been doing drugs and alcohol, and it was just like, ooh, their skin looked like leather. I thought, what is going on? But that's what's happening. Yes, ma'am. Well, we got to get our sleep too. That's right. Yeah, that's right. A lot of people have, so bringing that up is a good point. I remember Thomas B. Warren. Anybody knows Thomas Warren, who he is? Let me take a moment here. I'm not going to knock my tea over. Thomas Warren was just the premier preacher in the 1990s or so. He debated world-class atheist Anthony Flew from England. He debated him on the campus in Florida, at the college campus. He was on every lectureship that we had, Thomas B. Warren. He wrote a number of books, such as The Bible Only Produces Christians Only and the Only Christians, or Logic in the Bible. He's just a prolific writer, prolific preacher. And I knew him, but he told me one time, I was riding in the car with him. I had him at a lectureship where I was in Bay, Arkansas, and I picked him up at the airport. And he said, I'm going to tell you something, Brother Lockwood. He said, in my younger years, I spent a lot of time in study, more than I should have perhaps, because it has affected my health. I cannot do the things right now. And he was in his 70s at that point. He said, I cannot do the things that I wish I could do because I would stay up all night studying for these debates and all night studying for these books. He said, but I really neglected my health. And he said, please don't neglect your health and your sleep. He made that comment to me. I want you to go home and look him up. Thomas B. Warren. Thomas Warren. What a great What a great preacher, and he has so many materials that are so enlightening right today, and you ought to read them. Anyway, Thomas B. Warren. So that's a good point, Jan. That is, got to get our sleep. We have to take care of our bodies. This is the only body that we've been given, so we have to take care of it. Yes, ma'am. All right, check with your doctor. That's it. Well, I've gotten to where I have to take melatonin at night myself to keep myself asleep. Otherwise, I get up at 2. Boy, I tried getting up and reading and studying at that point, but then the next day I'm just like, I can't handle it. So I take some cup of melatonin before I go to bed and keeps me asleep. But, all right, that's neither here nor there. All right, chapter 3, verse 18, happy is everyone that retains her. And then verse 22, so shall they be life unto your soul. And that is wisdom. Knowing wisdom is good for your health. Chapter 4, go to chapter 4, verse 10. Hear, O my son, receive my sayings. The years of thy life shall be many. Long life. Once again, verse 22. Their life unto these that find them, and health in all of their flesh. So the passages that he has, a number of them lined up, tell us exactly the same thing. But let's go to number 2. Not only long life and good health, but also number 2, prosperity. Prosperity. Think about prosperity for just a moment. That's the page 50. Is it 58? All right, page 58. Wisdom brings, so we're looking at the fruits of it, not only long life, but also prosperity. All right, prosperity, beginning in chapter 8, verse 20. I walk in the way of righteousness in the midst of the paths of justice, that I may cause those that love me to inherit substance, that I may fill their treasuries. Let's think about for a moment the idea that having wealth is wrong. What does the Bible say about that? Does the Bible condemn wealth? It is harder. I remember one time in a preaching class when I first started preaching, and a young man got up and he was going to take the passage from Paul's statement. And he said it this, here's how I quoted it. He said, the Bible says money's the root of all evil. I thought, wait a minute here. Is that what it says? Yeah, the love of money. The love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. But some reaching after put a sword through their soul. If you have that as your priority, then of course it does slay you. And that's why it's very difficult for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of heaven, as our Lord says. But having material prosperity is not an insignia of sin. And people who are wealthy, we have in our country, we have blackened the name of those who are wealthy. Have you noticed that? We have absolutely made wealth a crime and a sin. So, for example, you've heard Bernie Sanders out there preaching, all the billionaires. He said, the billionaires, okay, let's just stop for a moment. 20 years ago, they would say, all the millionaires, but now they don't say millionaires. They say billionaires. Okay, if you're a millionaire, that's okay. Billionaires are the ones who are sinful. Why is he saying billionaires and not a millionaire? Because he's a millionaire. But that's right. And they all are that way. So billionaires are, we have blackened the idea of a billionaire or having a lot of money, a lot of wealth, but we've raised the bar because those who are doing the criticizing are millionaires themselves. And they made millions on tax dollars, as you put it, in Congress. So now he's out there ranting against billionaires. Yes, sir. That's correct. That's correct. If you go to a third world country, which apparently they want us to be like, because we spread that wealth around, you go to a third world country, the person who is on poverty row is very wealthy in America compared to what they are living in cardboard boxes in Central America or where? South Africa. I remember Rowan coming in here and telling us about the entire community living in not only cardboard boxes, but little pieces of tin that they find in the garbage and making a little shelter for themselves in South Africa. So we're all very, very wealthy here in America, the poorest of the poor. Say again? Not all of us are greedy. I hope we won't say that wealth comes with greed, but some people may be, but I hope that that doesn't mean we're all greedy. Wealth does not necessarily mean greed. I wouldn't say that Solomon was greedy, but he may have come that way. But some people can be greedy. That's sad too. And Americans have turned that way, haven't they? A lot of them have turned that way. So the point simply is, wealth is not an insignia of sin. And we have to note that because of passages such as these that Solomon gives us, that wealth comes to those who are wise. So how would that work exactly? How would that work? Well, you just said you're wealthy compared to people in Central America. How is it so? How's that, Sherry? That's true, but at the same time, we would not say a wealthy person is in sin because he's wealthy. Well, that's true also. No one denies that to be the case. And I do hear it in high school all the time. What's your goal? My goal is to make $1 million. Okay, well, that's your goal in life. Then that's a wrong goal. But Solomon tells us wisdom is the goal. And what will come as accruing on the side is you will gain wealth. So how does that work? It could be monetary wealth. Could be, though. How would it work, though? How could it be? I think you've hit the key right there. Go ahead, Dan. That's correct. I believe that's correct. That's my view as well. I want to go back to what you said. There was one key element there that, to me, says it all. What was that word? Work. The Bible ethic is work. 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 That's the Bible ethic. And when you're wise and are working, then you can, lest you be foolish, pass it off to people who do not care about it, or the government steals it, whatever may be the case. You can accrue. But it is not that, okay, that's my goal. I want, as Sherry said, it's not, I'm going to be wealthy. No, that's not the goal. The goal is to be wise. But when I'm wise, I know that, and we're going to come to it, that's an entire chapter in Proverbs, as well as also in Ecclesiastes. You must work. It is good, right, holy, and godly to work. And we have not put a premium on that in our country. For one thing, mandatory retirement age at 65. What is that? That is an arbitrary number that our government has set, saying you're going to retire. Well, there are a lot of people who are past 65 who are perfectly capable of working and being very productive, much more so than they were even when they're 30s, because they are so wise at this point. But we have put them out to pasture, and it has done wrong to our society. But I think the idea is work. And I think that's what Betsy mentioned. So if we have wisdom, and I know that I need to work, and we're told, and Paul tells us this in 2 Corinthians chapter, I think it's 13, that the fathers are to lay up for the children. That is, you're to save. You're to save. You're to save for a rainy day. That's good and wise. So we have really taken it in a different direction in our country. But that's what my understanding, at least, about material prosperity comes to those who are wise. Not that that's their primary goal, but it comes as a side benefit. Yes, ma'am. Does Solomon talk about managing your money? Answer is yes. Does he talk about how to manage your feelings? Yes. He talks about how to manage everything, inclusive of, as you mentioned, your money. People are happiest when they are working. You know that people who do not work, who are not busy, engaged in some productive activity, usually are those who are very quickly to be depressed, or can be very quickly depressed if you're not engaged in a productive activity. Production. But what's the key to that? We'll talk about that in a moment. The key to that is what we've had in America. That's because we went back, our founding fathers did, to the Bible to make the determination of how to do it. We'll talk about that in just a moment. So production, being productive in what we have. So here's another thing, but there is, as Sherry put it, this is number 3, there's something better than riches. We have to recognize it's not wealth. We're not after wealth. That's not my goal. There's something better than riches. This is Proverbs 8, verses 10 and 11. So let's not neglect this one. Proverbs 8, verses 10 and 11. Receive my instruction and not silver, knowledge rather than choice gold, for wisdom is better than rubies, and all the things that may be desired are not to be compared to it. Wisdom is first. When you have wisdom, then it's wealth, one of the benefits, but you're also an individual to whom other people come because they recognize that you have the ability to guide, give them some good advice. So we have several passages. Another one from Proverbs 8, verses 18 and 19. Someone read that one out. Proverbs 8, verses 18 and 19. When he says, riches and honor are with me, who's the me? Who's doing the talking here? Is it Solomon? Let's look at Proverbs 8. What did I say, verses 18 and 19? All right, let's look at chapter 8 for just a moment. Starting in verse 1. Does not wisdom call? Does not understanding raise her voice? Who's calling here? Wisdom's calling. He personifies wisdom. Wisdom personified. Wisdom is calling to you. All right? And he personifies it as a woman, by the way. Not a man, as a woman. On the heights beside the way at the crossroads, she takes her stand. Besides the gates in front of the town, at the entrance of the portal, she cries aloud, to you, O men, I call. Who's calling? Wisdom. Lady Wisdom. My cry is to the children of man. O simple ones, learn prudence. O fools, learn sense. Here I will speak noble things, and from my lips will come what is right. From my mouth will utter truth. Now let's go down to verse 18. So we come down to verse 18, start at verse 17. The sentence is, I love those who love me. Who's I? Wisdom. Lady Wisdom talks to you. And those who seek me diligently find me. Riches and honor are with me. Wisdom, Lady Wisdom. Enduring wealth and righteousness. My fruit, Lady Wisdom's talking. My fruit is better than gold, even fine gold, my yield than choice silver. I walk in the way of righteousness, in the paths of justice, granting an inheritance to those who love me, wisdom, and filling their treasuries. Wisdom speaking. So it's not Solomon so much as the personification of wisdom. So we would say, Lady Wisdom is talking to you and says, follow me. Here's what I want you to do. And when you do, then we will have wealth. All right, let's go to number 4, which I listed as number 4. Unless you have something to mention on that. The next one is wisdom gives knowledge and power. Is that how your book words it? Strength and power. Oh, strength and power. Yeah, strength. I'm sorry. Yeah, so mine says too. I just misread it. Strength. Yeah, top of 59. Strength and power. All right, there are a couple of things here I want to notice. Right, let's just start with this one, Proverbs 8. Still in Proverbs 8. This is 15 and 16. Going back a few verses. By me, that's wisdom, kings rule. Rulers decree what is just. By me, princes rule, and nobles all who govern justly. Is that to say that every king or every prince or every political leader is wise and just? No. We know that to be the case. It's not that at all. But if there is a political leader who deals righteously and justly and is wise, then that's the person of whom he speaks in this particular passage our Lady Wisdom talks about. So here's an illustration I thought about. And I could not help but think about this, really. So when our country separated from Great Britain, the separation came during the Revolutionary War, 1775, April. Remember how it began, the shot heard around the world. Then the final battle, 1781, but the British troops were still here until 1783. But everyone in Europe said that we would absolutely fail because we didn't want a king. And I told you the story of Washington said, no, we didn't fight this to have a king. But instead, we wanted a bottom-up governmental system that is controlled by the people. So right now, we have a lot of control at local level, don't we? You participate in local elections, right? You participate in local things. Now, the federal government has come down and tried to manipulate everything from the top down, but that's not how they set it up. They set it up where it's all bottom-up control. But because of that, the European power said there is no way that you're going to be a successful nation. Why would they say that? Correct. It had never been done. Never been done. Never. And they had only known kings and queens and princes and princesses. That's all they knew. You have to have monarchy from the top down, or you're not going to have a successful country. It's just not going to work. There's no way. And they all waited for us to collapse. And it looked like it might collapse at first, because in the Constitutional Convention, they said we want to have local control and have very little to do at the federal level. But in order to have the best possible executive office, they said we demand that one man fill that office, and that would be who? George Washington. We demand George Washington fill the executive office. You know, George Washington did not run for office. He did not campaign. There was no electioneering. He just said, if you want me, that's one thing. But he said, he didn't campaign at all. He didn't go around to his friends and said, hey, here's what I want you to vote. They all said he was a wise man. They loved his wisdom and his strength of character that had led them through the Revolutionary War. So they said, we think we will fail if we don't have Washington at the helm. So even in his cabinet, he put in Alexander Hamilton, who is more what I call a nationalist, but they say he's a federalist, and Jefferson, who is an anti-nationalist or anti-federalist. But they were opposing forces, but he put them all in his cabinet because he wanted to hear all sides of an issue before he made decisions. He retired after 2 terms in office, and his second term, they wanted him to stay, but he said, no, 2 terms is enough. And we didn't have it in law until when? Till when? FDR. FDR said, nope, I'm staying 3, I'm going to be 4. So he's started his 4th term. People said, whoa, whoa, whoa. From the time of Washington till the time of FDR, everybody said, that is the protocol that we will have only 2 terms in office. Because he felt like that needed to change hands to someone else. Now that is, okay, stop for a moment. Does that sound like a politician today? No. Even if you support Donald Trump, it doesn't sound like what Trump would say. You know what? I need to go because someone else needs to take the reins. So the point simply is, Washington was so wise that he was able to guide the ship of state through choppy waters in the early country. So I want to read the statement. This statement, I brought a book. It's called The 5,000-Year Leap. Anybody heard of this one? Cleon Skousen, who was in the FBI for a long time, and he wrote about what makes America great. So you think about this. When America was founded, or when America began, when Jamestown was founded in 1607 and so forth, how were we seeing light? How was light in the house? How is light in the house? What do we have for lights in a house? Candles and lanterns. What was different from that in the time of Abraham? Nothing. Nothing. We were walking and riding on horseback in the time of when we came to America, in the time of Jamestown. What was different from that in the time of Abraham? Nothing. Communication the same way. In the time of the founding of our country, if you wanted to talk to somebody, you go over there or you write a handwritten note. That's it, right? And then you carry it, or a pigeon will carry it. What was different from that in the time of Abraham? Nothing. Nothing. But all of a sudden, we created a system that recognized property rights and control from the bottom up. And it unleashed the greatest freedom that the world has ever known. And we made, and this book is called 5,000 Years. We've leaped 5,000 years into the future simply with the freedoms that we have in America because of the wisdom. And where did our founding fathers get it? They go to the Bible. They quoted the Bible more than about 30% of all the quotes come from the Bible. This is Cleon Skousen's statement. The spirit of freedom which moved out across the world in the 1800s was primarily inspired by the fruits of freedom in the United States. The climate of free market economics allowed science to thrive in an explosion of inventions and technical discoveries which merely 200 years later, in merely 200 years, gave the world gigantic new power resources, harnessed electricity, the internal combustion engine, jet propulsion, exotic space vehicles, all the wonders of nuclear energy. Communications were revolutionized, first by telegraph, then telephone, then radio, television. Now we have, of course, iPhones. The whole earth was explored from pole to pole, even to the depths of the sea. The men left the earth in rocket ships. We watched them walk on the moon in 1960, what was it, 8? We watched them walk on the moon. The average life length span was doubled. The incredible advancements we've made because our founding fathers said we want to go to the Bible and understand the system of government that we need to have in our country comes from freedom that people are given, and the system of government is from the bottom up. That's what gives us, that's why we have the statement by Solomon. It says, by me kings reign. They have the influence because they have wisdom to allow people the freedom to enjoy the fruits of their own labor. That's the biggest key, isn't it? All right. Well, I've ranted about some things here. All right. Good to see in a green uniform. That's great. All right, any comment to make as we conclude on that one? All right, well, the fruit of wisdom, there are many fruits of wisdom, and one of them, of course, is long life, material prosperity, and in this one, of course, we're looking at the fact that we have a great system set up by wisdom in our own country, by me kings reign. All right, anything to add?